All right, well, welcome again, everyone, to this webinar for VISTAs on using the Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award. Now, the Education Award is one of the most significant benefits for many VISTAs. To make the most of this award, it's important to know all the ways that it can be used, to understand all the ways that it can be used, and to understand the limitations. Again, I'm Calvin Landrum. I'm a training coordinator for the AmeriCorps VISTA program, and I'll be your host today. It's my pleasure to introduce today's other presenter. From the VISTA Member Support Unit, we have Natasha Douglas, a Member Support Specialist. Natasha is an AmeriCorps alum. She served with Public Allies in Chicago and was placed at the National Runaway Safe Line, the federally designated national communication system for runaway and homeless youth. She earned a bachelor's degree from Louisiana State University and a master's degree from San Diego State University. So thank you very much, Natasha, for being on this call with us today. We'll also hear about an AmeriCorps alum today and how they use their Education Award. But before we jump into the real meat of this presentation, let's take a look at our agenda. Today, we'll clarify the benefits and limitations of the Education Award, show how to make a payment, explore the eligible uses of the award, and close with how the Education Award impacts your taxes. If during the presentation you have any questions, please write them down and we'll have a Q&A at the end of the session. You can also use the Q&A panel to the right side of the screen, and we'll answer your questions near the end of the presentation. So I'm going to turn things over to Natasha, who's going to get us started. Natasha?
Thanks, Calvin. Hello, everyone. As Calvin said, I work for AmeriCorps VISTA with the VMSU. We get questions almost daily about the Education Award, so I'm really excited to be here and share my knowledge with you. As part of your VISTA benefits, you are eligible to receive a Siegel AmeriCorps Education Award if you successfully complete a 12-month term of service. The award amount for a full-time member is currently $5,815. Selecting the Education Award also allows you to access some other important benefits like the National Service Forbearance and interest accrual payments. National Service Forbearance allows you to postpone payments on your federal student loans during service and have up to 100% of the interest that accrued on those loans paid after service. The Education Award does have some limits to be aware of. You have 7 years to use the Education Award from the date you complete your VISTA service. You don't have to use it all at once, so you could divide up your award and use portions of it at different times during those 7 years. If you extend your service, you are only eligible for the end of service stipend during the extension period and cannot receive forbearance or interest payments for the extension period. Another limitation to be aware of is that for VISTAs, the Education Award is not transferable to dependents. This means you cannot give your Education Award to someone else. Now, should you decide to serve multiple terms, be aware that there is a limit on the value of Education Awards that an individual is allowed to receive. By law, an individual may not receive more than the value of 2 full-time Education Awards. Finally, the Education Award is counted as taxable income, so you may incur a tax liability. We'll come back to this a little later. The Education Award is managed through your My AmeriCorps account online. Once you have completed your year of service, a link will become available in your account that lets you submit an Education Award payment request. You'll visit this form each time you're ready to use your Education Award. On the form, you will enter the payment type, the amount authorized, and then the institution where the payment will be sent. Once you submit, a record of your request will appear in your account homepage. If for some reason the institution denies the request for payment, they should have entered comments explaining the reason for the denial. It's really important to note that this process cannot be automated. You'll have to create a request for each payment that you wish to make. You'll see on the screen that we've circled the field for payment type. We want you to be aware that there are only certain types of payments that you can make using your education award. There are two types of payments you can make using your education award: qualifying student loan payments and eligible education expenses. You don't have to choose one or the other. You could make your award for both, meaning you could make some student loan payments right after service and also pay for future education expenses later. It's up to you how you want to use the award. To help you understand all your options, we're going to spend some more time looking at both of these payment types. First, we'll look at how you can use your education award to pay for student loans. To start, let's clarify which types of loans qualify for this. So we're going to do a poll question. What do you think? Which types of loans can you pay with your education award? Please answer these questions using the poll.
Yeah, so our question is, which types of loans can I pay with the education award? We got all student loans, federal student loans, private student loans, Parent Plus loans, or not sure. If you're not sure, that's okay too. That's why we're here, to answer these questions. And speaking of questions, while we're on the topic, I do want to just remind everyone, if you do have questions, make sure that you put them in the Q&A box and not in the chat panel. They do get lost really easily there because there's a lot going on. If you put them in the Q&A panel, we're able to organize and sort through them and make sure that we can get to all of your questions. So yeah, we have a few more seconds while we're waiting for this to calculate, and we're going to see what our result is and see what you guys know. Let's see, it looks like we've closed it. It's still calculating, sometimes it takes a minute. Yeah, so all student loans, federal student loans, private student loans, what would you guys say? Okay, so let's see, it looks like we have 146 people, about half of everyone saying federal student loans. We've got some people saying not sure, a couple people not answering, since it's all student loans. All right. Well, the answer is that you can use it for federal student loans, so way to go if you're in that 146.
That's right. So when we talk about qualified student loans, we mean federal student loans. These are loans which are backed by or given by the federal government and are from the U.S. Department of Education. Although the government owns these loans, they may not be serviced through other companies like Nelnet, ACS, or Fed Loan Servicing. Private student loans and Parent Plus loans are not eligible for repayment with the Education Award. Parent Plus loans are not in your name, so you cannot use your Education Award to pay for them. If you're unsure of which type of loans you have, please contact your lender and ask them. Our host, Calvin, has some experience using his Education Award to pay for his qualified student loans. So we're going to be going over to him now for a second to hear about what his situation was like. Calvin?
Thank you. Thanks, Natasha. So yeah, I really wanted to share my personal experience to demonstrate how what we're talking about today applies to a real person and what I've learned by navigating the whole process of my loans and with my education awards and all of that stuff. So I served 2 terms in AmeriCorps NCCC, and I had about $34,000 in qualified student loan debt serviced by ACS and Fed Loan. For my time serving in AmeriCorps NCCC, I earned $11,195 in education award funds and about $2,900 in interest payments. While serving, I took advantage of the National Service Forbearance and the interest payments to reduce the burden of living on a fixed stipend. So this is what I did. So when I started my service with NCCC, I had graduated college just about 3 weeks before. My loans were already up for repayment, so I immediately put them into forbearance through AmeriCorps. at the end of my first year, I made an interest payment to both of my servicers. You know, I knew that I was going to do a second year of service, so I used my education award to make a payment for that month in between those two terms. I finished in November, and then I would start again in January. So for the month of December, I just used my education award to kind of float me on through. Luckily, it was only 1 month because before I took advantage of, you know, income-based repayment, my payments were about $250 to each servicer for a total of about $500 a month. It was nice to have my education award, you know, to really help with that payment between those periods of forbearance. Now, going into my second year of service, I placed my loans into forbearance again, and I kind of didn't think about them until my year was up. And at the end of my second year, I made a lump sum payment of about $10,670 to one of my servicers, ACS, to get rid of my loans with them and bring myself down to one loan servicer, Fed Loan. My reasons for this were, you know, I wanted to have one less payment each month. I really wanted to get rid of a large amount of debt. And Fed Loan was just way more willing to work with me on payments and what I could afford, and they were just way more flexible. So I wanted to, you know, kind of just deal with them and with my loans. Now, I could have used my education award to make payments each month on both of my loans, but for my personal situation, it made more sense for me to do things the way that I did. You know, I've currently used all of my education award funds, but I'm in a much better financial position because of it, honestly. You know, and managing your student loans can kind of be complicated and daunting, honestly. You know, and if you'd like more detailed information about managing your loans or opting into different programs, we have a recent webinar completely devoted to that topic available on the Vista campus, all about loans. It's a really good presentation. You get to hear my voice for another hour and a half. But you can see that on your screen. We'll post that link to the chat. So thanks for letting me speak, Natasha. Would you mind telling us more about using the Education Award to pay for future educational expenses?
Sure thing, Calvin. There are many ways you can use the award to pay for tuition as well as other education-related expenses. So we're going to clarify which types of expenses are eligible and how you might go about that process. To start, let's check in with you again. What do you think you can use the Education Award for? Which are eligible education expenses? Check all that you think apply. Which are eligible for education expenses? For credit class, a non-credit class, a sailing class in Mexico, a GRE test prep course, school supplies. Please take this time to answer the poll question located on the right side of your screen.
Yeah, so I guess while everyone's waiting, I know that I would really like to take a sailing class in Mexico. I don't know about you, Natasha, but I love the water and the beach, and it's getting cold over here in D.C., so that's all I want to be doing is sailing somewhere in Mexico. That sounds ideal.
That sounds amazing. I'm right now. It's 25 degrees right now where I'm
Yeah. All right, so it looks like we got most of our responses in. We're going to wait for the poll to calculate and tabulate so you can see what you all said. I'm really excited to see what the response is. These polls always really help us know where we need to take our conversation and where we need to focus. So let's see. So which are eligible education expenses? 208 people said for credit class. We had 67 saying non-credit class. 21 people saying sailing class in Mexico. We got GRE, school supplies. You're all in luck because the answer is all of these expenses are potentially eligible, but with one very important condition. You must pay for them through a Title IV institution. So you're probably wondering, what is a Title IV institution? Well, Natasha is going to tell us.
So, eligible education expenses are those incurred at Title IV institutions, as Calvin mentioned. So what are eligible, or what are Title IV institutions? They are institutions that can receive federal student aid. There are over 30,000 Title IV institutions, including universities, community colleges, and many other educational institutions. A great way to find out if a school is eligible is to check out the FAFSA list. We'll share the link in the chat now and later at the end. We know that a traditional four-year university isn't the ideal experience for everyone, so keep in mind that there are many trade schools on the Title IV list, including flight training, culinary school, and massage. On the list are also non-traditional schools such as tattoo schools, cosmetology programs, and outdoor education programs that accept federal financial aid. You should also know you don't have to enroll in a 4-credit program to use the award. You can take non-credit enrichment classes like guitar, swimming, photography, or anything else that's offered through an eligible community college or public university. If you don't take 1 or 2 classes per quarter, or if you take 1 or 2 classes per quarter at a community college, you can make your award last for years. It's also possible to study abroad using the Education Award as long as it's through a Title IV institution. Calvin can tell us more about a Vista alum who studied abroad.
Yeah, I sure can. This is the story of Rob Cox. He served as a Vista member with Jumpstart in Boston, and he completed his service in 2004. As the 7-year deadline for using his education awards was approaching, Rob was faced with finding an opportunity to use the Ed Award in a way that really made sense for him. I know I saw someone that said, "Oh, I can't transfer my Ed Award. I wasn't planning on going back to school." But pay attention to this one because this may be an option for you. So Rob wasn't interested in taking a regular university class, and he was also looking for the type of learning that happens outside of the traditional classroom. So after researching a number of options, he decided to use his education award to take a course with the National Outdoor Leadership School, or NOLS. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of that. Rob took a course called Baja Coastal Sailing and spent 21 days in the field around the Gulf of California through the desert of Baja, Mexico, learning the technical aspects of sailing, including navigation, wind and wave theory, meteorology, and how to survive the extremes of a desert environment. Now, NOLS itself is not an eligible institution for using the Education Award. But fortunately, NOLS has developed agreements with 2 other institutions, Central Wyoming College and Western State Colorado University, and those are Title IV institutions. So this allows AmeriCorps alums to use their education awards for NOLS courses and receive credit from one of those accredited universities. One would need to apply to both NOLS and one of the Title IV schools, and then the education award can be used to pay for the NOLS tuition and equipment deposit. So for more information about outdoor and international travel options using the Education Award, check out the link that we are going to put in the chat.
If you decide to use the Education Award to pay for tuition, you'll want to consider that there are lots of schools and programs that will actually match your Education Award. Those come in the form of matching funds, scholarships, expanded benefits, or both. One thing to note, though, is that often these matching funds or scholarships are for specific programs or departments within a larger university, so please look carefully. For example, Carnegie Mellon University Hines College offers a minimum scholarship of $10,000 per semester for Vista alums, while Emory University offers a $5,000 match on your award specifically for their School of Public Health. Some other matching institutions include Texas A&M, University of Arizona, University of Colorado, Duke University, and many more. If you haven't already looked at the list already, please do spend some time checking out all the great opportunities out there. We'll put a link in the chat now to add to that list. Another way you can use the Education Award is for expenses needed to attend school. This includes books, school supplies, equipment, as well as cost of living expenses like room and board. However, using the award for these things does take planning and organization on your part. Any expense that you would like to use the education award for must be directly attributable to a class that you are taking. You can't just go to Best Buy and get a camera for your education award just because you'd like one. The camera must be a requirement for a class that you are taking, and the expense needs to be approved by your school's financial aid office. So if you'd like to use your education award to help pay for non-tuition expenses, the first step is to always talk to your financial aid counselor to get the expenses approved. Once approved, you'll send an education award payment to your school's financial aid office, and then you will end up being reimbursed for those approved expenses directly from your school. If you decide to use your education award for tuition or education expenses, we strongly recommend that you start the process early. This means researching enrollment timelines and tuition deadlines at your school. As we showed earlier, it's easy to submit a payment request from your MyAmeriCorps account, but don't wait until the last minute. It can take up to 4 to 5 weeks for the school to process your payment, so please don't wait until 2 days before your tuition is due. Anytime you want to use your education award for education expenses, it's important to do some careful reading on the school's financial aid website and even speak with a financial aid counselor. They can help you determine the best payment timeline based on the school and your situation.
Well, thanks, Natasha. So we're going to switch gears a little bit. We're going to talk about taxes. I know there's always questions about taxes. They're complicated, they're hard, no one likes them. But it's important to know sort of how they work, you know, even if it's just kind of a base level understanding. Yeah, so as we move through this next section of the webinar, please also remember that we're approaching the topic of taxes as it specifically relates to your education award, and we won't be able to address questions about your taxes in general. So, to start, we have a couple more poll questions that now appear to the right side of the screen. I really want to see where you all are coming from and sort of what you know about this topic. So the first question is, will you owe taxes on the education award? Again, it's totally fine if you're just guessing out there and you don't really know. We're going to address it and talk about it. So you may not know the answer to this, but the question is, will you owe taxes on the education award? Your options are yes, the year you finish your VISTA service, yes, in the year you use some of your Ed Award, yes, but only once you've spent the whole Ed Award, or no, the education award is not taxed. Or, you know, you could be not sure. The other question is, will you owe taxes on the interest accrual payment? Answers are yes, in the year you finish your service, or once your loan's paid off, or no, the interest accrual payment is not taxed. Yeah, so while you're answering the poll questions, I'll add that people generally don't like to have to figure out their taxes. It's certainly an area where it really pays, though, you know, quite literally, to do your research, and it's a place where a little knowledge can go a long way. So you may want to make some notes and put them somewhere where you'll be able to find them come tax time. All right, so let's let that calculate and see what you all said. Tax season is coming up, so I'll tax all W-4 statements, W-2, all W-2 statements have to be out by the end of January. All right, so what do we got? Someone says yes, any year you use some of your award, got the highest response for question 1. And then for question 2, let's see, no, the interest accrual payment is not taxed. So those are your answers. So a good number of you correctly identified that the education award is taxable income in the year that you use it. At the end of your service, you receive your award, but you're not taxed on it until you actually use those funds. So anytime you use your education award, it counts as income, and you'll be taxed on the amount that you use in the year that it's used. If a year goes by that you don't use any of your education award, you don't have to pay taxes on it. It's just kind of sitting there waiting for you. Now about the interest accrual payment, again, if you put your loans into forbearance, you can request to have the interest that is accrued paid off. This benefit is also considered income, though, so you will owe taxes on this amount in the year that you finish your service, which for you all would probably be next year. Well, it will definitely be next year. So that means the next year, if you receive an interest accrual payment, it will be added to your taxable income for 2017. So let's take a look at tax liability and learn about it a little bit. So Vista didn't have a lot of questions about tax liability. And if someone asked me a direct question, which I'll address. We understand, that you would like a specific estimate for your tax liability when using the Education Award. So I want to take a second to clarify why it's not possible to give a standard universal estimate. This is because your tax liability depends on several personal and situational factors. What we can show you is a list of those basic primary factors that impact tax liability, so you can kind of make your own estimate. As a general rule, your tax liability will always be tied to your income during a given year. The Education Award is considered income, so when you use it, it'll be added to whatever your annual income is for that year. Again, this is a very basic understanding of this, but hopefully you think it's valuable. So for a given year that you use all or part of your Education Award, what you owe in taxes will be dependent on the 5 factors listed above. Your total annual income during the year that you use your Education Award, the amount of the award that you used, any tax credits or deductions which would reduce your taxable income, the federal tax rate, and the tax rate of the state that you earned the income in. So your annual income plus the amount of Education Award you use, along with any tax credits and deductions based on your personal circumstances, gets you your total taxable income. That total taxable amount then gets taxed at the federal tax rate and taxed at the state tax rate of where you earned the income. So if you live in Texas, there is no state tax and you're in luck. Again, these are just most basic factors, but as you can see, there's many unknown variables going on. So let's take a look at how this might play out in some hypothetical examples. Oh, I do see the chat blowing up about the Education Award being taxed. We know. It's one of those things that's an act of Congress to change. We've tried to get it changed and get it to not be taxed. The CNCS and AmeriCorps, we didn't want it to be taxed, but it's kind of written into the legislation, and it's not super hard to be, or it's not super easy to change that one. Okay, so our scenario for taxes. Let's start with this one. So this VISTA just finished service in 2015. Let's say this VISTA had $10,000 of income in 2015. For 2015, in one version of the scenario, the one on the left, they used $500 of their Education Award. In the other version, the one on the right, they used the entire award, $5,815. In both cases, they have about $8,000 in credits and deductions, but as you can see, the added income from using the entire Education Award increases the overall taxable income. Now, this is a hypothetical example, but you can see how important it is to be aware of how much Education Award you're using relative to your other income in a given year. In this example, one had a higher taxable income than the other, but both would be taxed at the same federal tax rate. However, let's see how this might look after a few years and maybe if you have a different income level. So in another scenario to consider, say it's been a few years after service. This VISTA is now making $40,000 a year at a job where they're still paying taxes throughout the year. They then decide to use their entire Education Award, full $5,815, which is added to their taxable income for that year. The total income is now $45,815, and after subtracting credits and deductions from that, you can see that the taxable income of $37,815 has brought the VISTA into a higher tax bracket. So that means there's more taxes to pay. We say all this again to demonstrate that every person has a different situation, and we cannot give individual tax advice. Your own personal circumstances will determine your use of the Education Award, and you'll have to make some pretty informed decisions, like when and what amounts of your Education Award to use and what it means for you. This is when it really does pay to do your research and take the time to read up on all this stuff, and make some pretty strategic moves. As you can see, taxes can be complicated and personal to each person. A great way to explore your potential tax liability is to just download a recent 1040 form and estimate filling it out with the most recent tax rates and your financial information for the coming year. When making a decision about using your education award, we suggest you first test this out to plan your tax liability. The 1040 form comes with instructions, and the IRS.gov website has many added resources to get you started. So when it comes time to filling out your tax return, which again is coming up in the next month or two, there are also lots of different programs available online and in person that can help you. For those with an income less than $53,000, you can receive free in-person tax prep through VITA, the Volunteer Income Tax Assistance. Free File is a great online option to consider if you're looking for a quick and easy way to file your taxes. When it's time to file your return, you simply choose a Free File service provider, download their software, and it'll walk you through the filing process. At the end, it will automatically submit your return to the IRS. Free File services are available for those with a household income of $60,000 or less. If you do have lots of questions about your taxes, we suggest that you connect directly with someone from the IRS or a tax professional. For Vistas, we realize that this is an important topic for you, but please be aware, again, that we can't give you personal advice. This may sound daunting, but there are several ways you can contact the IRS and ask your tax questions. The IRS.gov website has a help and resources section, a contact us section, and there are a number of FAQs to get you started. Of course, these resources are specific to federal taxes. If you have questions about state taxes, my best advice is to look up your state's Department of Revenue and contact them directly. So that being said, back to you, Natasha.
Thanks, Calvin. To make sure you can make use of all this information in the long run, CNCS has an online education award site for you to take advantage of, and I strongly recommend you at least browse the site. The site is divided into two main areas: stories, which illustrate many ways to use the Education Award, and a guidebook that organizes the information by topic. There are 7 different stories that illustrate different situations where an AmeriCorps member is deciding how best to use the Education Award, or ways to manage student loans. Each story comes with 1 or more short animated videos and links to additional information. Now, we've covered a lot of information this afternoon, so let's take a moment to review some of the most important points to remember. 1, you can use your Education Award to pay for existing debt on qualifying student loans. Qualifying student loans are federal loans. If you aren't sure which type of loans you have, check with your lender. 2, if you'd like to pay for future education expenses, eligible expenses are those made at Title IV institutions. These are schools that accept federal financial aid. 3, once you've decided how to use your award, you can request payments through your My AmeriCorps account. You'll want to remember that Education Award payments cannot be automated, so you'll need to submit a request each time. And finally, any use of the Education Award is considered income. You'll be responsible for taxes on the award during the year it was used for the amount that was used.
Cool, thanks, Natasha. So let's talk about some next steps you can take as a follow-up to this session. Number 1, you can explore the Education Award website and make sure that you're well informed about all the different ways you can use the award. I do want to pop back just for 1 second on the issue of the Education Award being taxed. One of the reasons that they gave for it being taxed for transparency's sake is that you can use the Education Award to get a computer, to buy art supplies, to get things that aren't just tuition, and that's why that was the rebuttal when we said that we didn't want it taxed. They came back and said, well, you can use it, even if it's a little roundabout, you can use it for art supplies and for things that, that aren't just tuition. So that is why it's taxed. Number 2, you can explore a list of title and sport institutions and see what's out there. There's so many cool things. If anyone wants to be a tattoo artist, you can do that using your education award. You want to be a barber, you can do that. That's cool. You can be a doctor, and we can help you pay for that. We can't pay for all of that. That's an expensive amount of school, but it can help a little bit. And number 3, explore schools and programs that match the education award. You may discover some programs and scholarships that you've never considered before that can really increase your benefits. If you haven't signed up for the AmeriCorps Alums newsletter, you should go to AmeriCorpsAlums.org and sign up for their newsletter. They just did an entire webinar with graduate schools who do match the education award or offer some other special benefit for national service members, which is you all. So check those out. All those resources are out there. They also keep a list of schools that will work with you and work with your education award. So down the line, once you've decided how to use your award, consider speaking to a financial aid counselor. A financial aid counselor if you plan to use it for cost of attendance. Finally, whether you plan to use it for repaying loans or education expenses, it's a good idea to estimate your tax burden in advance. So thank you all for your participation. We're now going to get ready for our Q&A.
Thank you. At this time, if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 from your phone and record your first and your last name clearly when prompted. Again, please press *1 from your phone and record your first and your last name clearly when prompted. One moment as we wait for any questions.
All right, thanks. Yeah, so while we're waiting for those questions, we did have a couple of chat questions if you guys wanted to answer them. Did you find any new ways to use the Education Award, or did you change your mind about how you plan to use it? While you're thinking about that, you can go ahead and put those into the chat. Let's see. Yeah, we're getting some questions. Again, Heather, put that question into the Q&A so it doesn't get lost. We just got some yeses, some no's to our questions.
We do have 2 questions in the queue.
Okay, yeah, give us 1 second.
Absolutely.
We'll get to questions in just a second. We want to ask everyone, though, about, we want to know what you thought about this webinar before we, start getting the questions. On the right side of your screen, you'll find a quick poll where you can share feedback about this webinar. So take a moment to answer those questions. We like to be able to improve these webinars, and your input helps us so much. We go through and we read every single comment, every review that you all make, and try to make these really useful. And we always want your suggestions as to how we can do better, or what you want to hear, or just what you want to hear about. So go ahead and fill out that evaluation for us, if you will. So let us get started with some Q&A. So yeah, let's go straight to the phone. Who do we got on the phone?
Thank you. First question comes from Kyle. Your line is open.
Hi.
Hi, Kyle.
Hi. So I think you answered my question already during your presentation.
Okay.
But I just wanted to double check.
Okay.
So my VISTA service term ends on February 20th. And as it turns out, I was just accepted to grad school.
Cool.
So their first payment due happens to be on February 24th, which is 4 days later.
Right.
So originally I was going to ask how early would we be able to access the Education Award, but it sounds like it would take 4 to 5 weeks to even get the payment processed. So that wouldn't be possible, would it?
Yeah, so what happens is once you're done with service, we go through and we take you out of service. We remove you so that we can, so that you stop getting paid, and we press a button that says this person is no longer serving. When we do that, that is what releases your Education Award. So it's usually pretty quick. Your Education Award can be released to you as long as everything is completed at the end of your service. You can get it in about 3 to 4 days. Now, processing times are the thing that you should be worried about, because if you're done on the 20th, you don't get your Ed Award until maybe the 23rd or 24th. The payment's due on the 24th, and you submit that payment. There's no guarantee that it's actually going to get over to them in time.
Right. Okay. that answers everything.
Yeah, but if you do need, I mean, if you call the VMSU, maybe your institution, you can call them and say, hey, I'm waiting on this education award. The VMSU can actually provide you with a letter that says, you know, this person just finished serving, you know, he is going to be receiving this education award. Maybe they'll use that as like a placeholder to like kind of postpone that payment until you get it. But you can definitely work that out like with your school and the VMSU. If you call them, they can provide you, you know, with some sort of documentation for that.
Sure.
Yes. Generally, the schools will be flexible with you as far as the payment. So if you let them know that you have the education award that's going to be being dispersed, they're generally flexible about waiting for that payment if you provide them with the documentation that you did request the payment from CNCS. In my experience, it has worked, so it should work for you too.
Sure, I'll give that a try first before doing anything else. And thank you very much.
Great.
You're very welcome, Kyle. All right, who else we got on the phone?
Thank you. And as a reminder, if you would like to ask a question, please press star 1 from your phone and record your first and your last name clearly when prompted. Our next question comes from Ms. Sanders. Your line is open.
Hello, thank you.
Hi.
I have two questions. The first is that my federal Perkins loan, it went to collections, and you know, clearly I don't have my education award yet. Will I be able to use my education award to pay for the Perkins loan, which is now with a debt collector?
That is a good question, and I don't think that you will be able to once it's in collections. It needs to have to come out of that status and be with the original, because Perkins loans go through your school, through your institution. So like you can only pay the institution, or your loans have to be in like a good standing. You know what I mean? Like they would need to be back with the institution so that you could pay the institution.
Okay. Okay, thank you. And then my second question is that if I were to consolidate my federal loans via someone like Sally Mae, would I be able to use my education award to pay those?
Yeah, as long as your loans are federally backed student loans, you would be able to. They just can't be private loans. So no, if they're private loans, no, you wouldn't be able to. But as long as they're backed by the U.S. Department of Education, yeah, you can use your education award to pay for this.
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right.
All right. Do we have anyone else on the phone?
There are no further questions over the phone.
All right, cool. Well, let's go through our Q&A list on the side over here. All right, so someone says, Scott says, I'd like to know if I can retroactively pay for current academic fees, i.e. tuition from classes taken during my year of AmeriCorps service. If so, then how should I pay for the class, and how will I use the award to reimburse the cost? So you cannot use the education award while you're in service because you haven't earned it yet. If you're planning on, when you can take a class, pay for it, or no, not even then. I mean, you can't use the education award for classes that you take while you're currently in service. Let's see. Joan says, I don't understand the restriction on the use during extension periods. I saw a couple of things, a couple of questions about extension periods, so I'll explain that a little bit. Yeah, so sometimes people get to the end of their service year. You know, they served their full 12 months, and maybe they've been working towards a big event, you know, that's happening a month after they're supposed to be over. They can actually extend their service for another month to be on for 13 months just to kind of wrap up their project and be done with it. During that 1 month extension, you're not eligible to receive any additional education award funds. You can only receive it, you know, for that full term. So when we say you can't receive education award for the period of extension, it means like, you know, you've earned it for your 12 months, and then during that period of extension, you're only eligible to receive the stipend, which accumulates at $125 a month. Let's see. How can you determine whether your loans are federal student loans? Yeah, call the servicer and ask them. That's going to be the best and easiest way. Let's see. It says, can you make payments on your loans while serving and still have interest paid off at the end of your year? The answer is no. The interest only gets paid off when you put your loans into forbearance, and they're in forbearance. And while they're in forbearance, you're not making any payments. And that's kind of how we keep track. So you go through the My AmeriCorps portal, you know, do the loan forbearance request. Once it's accepted, from the time that it's accepted until the end of your service or whenever you take it out of forbearance, we will pay off the interest that is accumulated over that time period. So if you put your loans into forbearance halfway through your service, we'd only pay off the interest that is accumulated over those 6 months. Let's see, someone says, if you serve 2 terms but never use the loan interest repayment, can you go back and have it paid? No, you can't, because your loans would have had to have been in forbearance during your service term. Let's see. Shannon Webster says, when we get to the tax portion, I'm curious to know how much Calvin ended up paying on his taxes when he paid that $10,000 lump sum. I'd also like to know if the $10K includes the interest that was paid on the loans. So my taxes they weren't affected too much because I had just come off of a year of national service. So I was like you guys, I had just made my stipend from AmeriCorps. So my income that year was maybe $12,000, and then adding an additional $10,000 to that still kept me at a very low tax bracket, so it didn't increase, like my tax percentage stayed the same. Now, if I were to do that, maybe the year after, it probably would have bumped me up into a higher tax bracket because I had a salary job where that $10,000 probably would have made the difference. Let's see, Lauren says, can I apply the education award towards a TEFL, TSOL, Teaching English course offered by a university affiliate, example, Oxford Seminars? I'm not familiar with Oxford Seminars, but if they are a Title IV institution or are billed through a Title IV institution, then yes, you could. So if you're interested in taking a Teaching English course, you just need to make sure that you're doing it through an institution that is a Title IV, so public college, university, community college, or through an institution that where you pay through a Title IV institution, if that makes sense. Let's see, Eric Thorpe says, so if I have a monthly payment due on student loans, do I have to make each payment 5 weeks in advance? No, you don't. We say 5 weeks just to kind of give yourself some time. The payments, as long as you're sending them to the right person, are generally, they take less than 5 weeks, so you wouldn't need to send them 5 weeks in advance. I will tell you, when I first got my education award, I kept sending out payment requests, and they kept getting denied. I didn't know why, so I called them, and they said, yeah, you don't have a loan with us. You're sending it to the wrong people. So I had to figure out who I was sending it to, and it was a big mess. So once I figured it out, it was all very easy. It was totally user error on my part. Let's see. My question is, does AmeriCorps pay all the interest accrued, or is there a cap on how much interest will be paid? There is no cap on the interest accrual payment. It's just, the cap is whatever's accrued over those over the time that you were in forbearance. What should we do if our loan provider doesn't accept the Siegel Award? It would suck to have completed a year of service thinking you'd have the award and then they deny it. If you're worried about that, I would suggest getting in touch with your loan servicer immediately and just calling and asking them, will they accept the education award as a form of payment? They should, but that's not guaranteed, and you should call them and just double check if that's something that you're concerned about. Let's see, I've heard that tuition payments made through the Education Award are usually made in 2 payments. Is this true? If so, how long apart are the payments made? That's a really good question, Shannon, and that one kind of gets into the more technical aspects of the Education Award. So what happens is, let's say you're starting school in the fall and you're there, and your cost of attendance is $10,000. What a lot of institutions will do is process your education award for $5,000 at first, and then you'll still have a balance of $5,000. So if you send them $10,000, they'll process 5 of it, and then a couple weeks later they will process the second half of it. And that has something to do, I forget, it's Jessica Knight, who's our producer. She had this similar situation and story, it has something to do with like billing and processing and refunds and things like that. But they are sometimes billed in 2 payments. So I would give them a call, talk to your financial aid counselor, and said, hey, can you walk me through this payment process? I just want to make sure that I'm all caught up with you guys, and that I'm doing all of this correctly.
Yeah, Calvin, I can speak really briefly about that. Hi, everyone. This is Jessica from Ed Northwest. Just the bottom line is that every school's financial aid office may have different experiences and different ways of processing this, so please speak to the financial aid office. In my case, I was working with Portland State University, and they were very aware that they were going to receive the payment in 2 chunks, so it didn't impact my payment being late, but it was a little disconcerting because I saw that the payment was distributed in 2 chunks.
Yeah, well, there we go. Thank you. All right, cool. So we have another question from Carmen Garcia. It says, at the end of our service, how do we collect our interest accrual payment? When you're done with your service, or even currently, you have a tab that says Education Award on your MyAmericorps portal. When you're exited from service, there will be a Create Forbearance or Create Interest Request button there. You click that button, choose your servicer that your loans have been in forbearance with, and send off that request. It is electronic. It could take a couple weeks to get back to you for you to receive an answer, but just make sure that you go in and check. They'll give you either a status that says this request was approved, this is how much we paid, or it'll say this is denied and this is the reason. If it was denied, sometimes it can be like me where I was just sending it to the wrong person, I had the address wrong, or there's like another issue that maybe they need you to clear up, so you should call them if that is the case. Let's see, since Sadie says, how would room and board be considered directly attributable to a class? It's wrapped into your cost of attendance. It's part of what it takes for you to go to college is room and board. So if you have to pay for a dorm room, that is part of your cost of attendance, and you can pay for that. As long as it's in that cost of attendance, you can pay for it using your education award. Is there a tax difference between using the education award to pay for school or to pay back loans, or is it the same? It's the same for that one. The taxes don't it doesn't mess with your taxable income. Let's see. How do you utilize the education award for public loan forgiveness? I've heard you need to pay off what you would have owed throughout the year in a lump sum in order for this year to count as year 1. That is correct. Eric, look at that. Eric's paying attention. He's got this. So basically, if you are planning on doing public service loan forgiveness, that's basically what that says if you're not familiar, is that after 120 on-time payments towards your loans, they are forgiven as long as you were working in the public service field and your payments were on time and you were in a period of repayment. So in order to count your year of VISTA service towards your 1 year of public service loan forgiveness, you're correct, Eric, you would have to pay in a lump sum equal to 12 payments. So if your payments were normally $100 a month, you'd pay $1,200 of your education award to your loan servicer and ask that they split that into 12 payments so that you can get credit for towards your public service loan forgiveness. That's a little tricky, but all you have to do is it's really important for that to keep in touch with your servicer and let them know what your intentions are behind your payment. Call them and say, hey, I'm sending over this amount of money. This is how I'd like for it to be used, and they will do that for you. Let's see. Oh, do we have any questions on the phone? Has anyone else called in?
There are no questions over the phone. However, if you would like to ask a question, please press *1 from your phone and record your first and your last name clearly when prompted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so Jennifer Brown says, I'm serving my 3rd AmeriCorps term. Does that mean that my 7-year clock starts now during my 3rd term or after I stop serving as an AmeriCorps member? So your 7-year clock starts the day that you earn the education award or your last day of service. So for your 1st year of service, that clock has already started ticking on that portion of your education award. For your 2nd year of service, the clock has started on that one, so that one's probably 7, the other one's 6. And then for your, so the clock has already started ticking, even though you're serving a 3rd term. Let's see. Sorry, guys, I'm going through your questions and seeing what hasn't been answered yet. Let's see, how long can you extend the period in which you can use the education award? I don't think it's very long, and those are granted in very rare circumstances, only in like outstanding circumstances where it's like, oh, I'm in the military and I'm, stationed somewhere where I just like, it's not an option for me to go to college right now. I believe it is up to another year. I don't want to give you the wrong info though. Let's see, Amy says, for using the Education Award for public service loan forgiveness, does it make the most sense to use the Education Award all at once or over a period of time? So again, this goes back to, you can use that lump sum payment to get 12 credits or 1 year of credit towards your public service loan forgiveness, and then it's really just going to depend, if you're going to be on income-based repayment, your payments could be really low, and you can just use your Education Award to make those payments as long as you can until your Education Award runs out. If you're planning on going back to school, maybe you get your payments really low and you pay them out of pocket, and then use your Education Award to pay for your future schooling. But it's that's going to be entirely up to you. The only really implication between the Education Award and public service loan forgiveness is that lump sum payment and how to get credit for your year of VISTA service. Which again, get in touch with your lender and just let them know what your intentions are. Let's see. If you started on 10-1 or after service, you receive an Education Award of $5,115. You started prior to oh, that was an answer to a question. Okay, gotcha. That was a question. Please address using the Education Award for test prep courses. All right, Joan. Test prep courses, you can take them as long as they are through a Title IV institution. So if you're going to go to University of Texas, or even if you're not going to go to University of Texas, let's say you just find a GRE test prep class that they're offering. If you took it at that institution, you could use your Education Award to pay for it because that is a Title IV institution. Now, if you're just going through like I don't know, GREtestprep.com, and you want to use Education Award to pay for that, the chances are that's probably not going to work because they're not a Title IV institution and are not eligible or set up to receive federal funds. I hope that helps with that one. Whew, a lot. Let's see. Jess, do you see anything that I missed? Natasha, do you see anything that I missed? Oh, okay, yeah, public service loan forgiveness. Yeah, I'll talk about that for a second. So with public service loan forgiveness, if you have, again, you have to make 120 payments over the course of 10 years. It adds up, to 10 years. Those 10 years and 120 payments don't have to be consecutive. So let's say, that you're working in VISTA right now, you count this year towards your 120 payments. You can take a break from public service and go work in private sector for a couple of years, and then go back, for 8 years, and then get your loans forgiven. Obviously, it's going to take you longer, but if you don't know where your career path is leading, or if you are not actively making payments or whatever, just know that it's 120 payments total, which if paid, straight through would be 10 years, but it doesn't have to be straight through. You don't have to work in public service for 10 years straight. Elizabeth Fansler, neither of my questions in the Q&A have been answered. All right, girl, what you put in there? Let's see. I'll see if I can find it. If I can't find it, go ahead and throw it in the chat, and I'll be looking out for it. Does off-campus housing count toward, Does off-campus housing count towards cost of living for graduate education, and would it be eligible? So this is one where it would have to be wrapped into your cost of attendance. You can't just say, you can't just oh, my rent's $700. I'm going to use my Education Award to pay for that. That $700 has to be billed through your institution or wrapped into your cost of attendance. So let's say that room and board is in your cost of attendance, but it's not on-campus housing. What would then happen is that you would you'd work with your financial counselor to say, this is how much I'm expecting my rent to be for this semester. let's put this in my cost of attendance. Then you just use your education award to pay that amount, and then anything over the cost of tuition and maybe something else gets refunded back to you. So then that's how you would use those funds towards your rent. But again, it has to be billed through your institution and it has to be wrapped into your cost of attendance. All right, your next question was, it was stated that the interest accrued during our forbearance period will possibly be paid off up to 100% after a 12-month AmeriCorps service. What determines the percentage of interest that is paid off, and how can we anticipate this? So I will say up to 100%. I don't know a situation where it hasn't been 100% of whatever has accrued since the time you started your forbearance to the time that you finished your forbearance. Again, it's like if you were only in forbearance for 6 months, we're only going to pay 6 months of the accrued interest. But if you started if you did your full 12 months and you were in a period of forbearance, all that interest that is accrued will be paid off at the end of your service year. So sorry if that was confusing language. Let's see, Bree says, if we plan to serve a second year, how do we create a forbearance request again, just as we did for this year? Will our Ed Award just sit and wait for us from our first year until we complete the second year? Yeah, so to answer the first part of that, you would need to create a second forbearance request. It's not just going to transfer over. That forbearance request is only good up until your last day of service. So even if you don't do anything about it, it's going to end on your last day of service. So if you're going to do a second year, you would have to do another request. And your education award will just sit and wait for you from your first year until you complete your second year. But during your second year, you are able to use those education award funds because you've earned them. They're just like waiting, they're just sitting there waiting for you to say what you want to do with them. All right, let's see. Someone says, mine haven't been answered either. I sent them twice. Aniki, put your questions in the chat so I can answer you. Let's see. Sandra says, how long should we wait after submitting a forbearance request for an answer? I submitted a request in August. Go in and look at that, check that status and see if it says that it was denied. If it was denied, hopefully they gave you a reason. If not, they should have given you a reason why it was denied. But call them, call your servicer and say, hey, I submitted this back in August, what's the deal? Did you get it? Did you not get it? Let me confirm the address that I sent it to, make sure that I'm sending this to the right person. If you submitted it back in August, you should definitely follow up on that because it shouldn't take 2 months. You're welcome, Bree. Let's see, Kevin Anaya. If I opted to put my federal loans in income-based repayment and made payments through my service, will those payments count towards the public service loan forgiveness as well as the 12 payments I make with the education award? Kevin, you hit the nose. I'm so glad I'm really glad you put that actually because that is a really good way of getting. I'm a little apprehensive to tell you all this because I know it opens a floodgate, but it's a way to get 2 years of public service loan forgiveness credit out of your 1 year. If you're making payments throughout your service year, if your payments are $5 and you're making them all year, you're currently doing public service, you're making a payment, your payments are current, each one of those counts. You can also make a lump sum payment with your education award and get 12 additional credits. It is legal, it is possible, they don't advertise it, but you can do it. So yes, you'll get 24 payments out of your year of service so long as you've been making payments all year. If an institution matches education awards and I have 2 awards, will they usually match both or just the value of one? That's going to be up to the institution, so you have to get in touch with them and ask them what they're willing to do. Let's see. Sandra says, it says pending institution response, give them a call. Rebecca says, can you answer if it makes sense to change from income contingent to forbearance? My current payment will be $0 either way. So again, if your payment's going to be $0, each one of those $0 payments counts as a credit towards your public service loan forgiveness. So even if your payment's $0, you're still getting those credits, and then you can get additional credits at the end of your service by using your education award to make a lump sum payment. And honestly, that's up to you. Is the value of the interest accrual payment worth more than those been getting additional credits for PSLF, I don't know. It's up to you and your personal situation. But you can go either way, and I think you'd be fine either way. Let's see. If I consolidate my loans, will that affect whether or not my interest will be paid off? If I can use the education award for my loans, they're all federal. As long as they stay federal, you can use your education award. But if you, I would wait to consolidate until maybe you were done with service, because if your loans are in forbearance and you consolidate them, you're changing up the terms of your loans, which means they'll come out of forbearance and you have to put them back into forbearance. And that can be tricky regarding the interest payment. So if you're going to do that, I would maybe wait until the end of your service. Daryl, says someone please answer me? Daryl, I don't see your question. I'm sorry. I'll answer you as soon as I can find that question. Put it in the chat. I'll answer you, I promise. Let's see. Muriel says, do you think it's better to use the award all at once or loan or in parts? Again, personal situation. It's going to be up to you and what your finances require. Think about those tax implications that we talked about. Think about how much money you plan on making in the future, or do you reasonably expect to be making. Think about, do I want a student loan payment each month, or would I just like to use my education award until it's paid off? If by paying it off, will I be relieving myself of a large chunk of debt? Can I pay off the entire thing? Those are the questions you'll need to ask yourself. Let's see. Karen, just clarify, is it recommended not to make any payments during forbearance in order for AmeriCorps to keep track for the interest accrual payment? So if you're in forbearance, you can make a payment, and that doesn't mess up the amount of your, well, it will affect the amount of your interest accrual payment, just that it may lower it, because if you're making a payment, your principal is lower, or the amount that you owe is lower, so then that could make your interest payment a little bit lower, but it wouldn't hurt you to go ahead and make a payment if you could. Aniki, I want to enter a 9-month urban agriculture apprenticeship program directly after service. It is accredited by the State Community College Board for 31 continuing education credits with the supply that has been approved for financial aid. Yeah, as long as it is through a Title IV institution, go on that FAFSA website, type in the name of your institution, and make sure that it's there. But as long as it's through whatever, as long as it's billed through an institution that is Title IV and is set up to receive federal funds, you can do that. Let's see. Will the Education Award help with defaulted loans, such as Afford or grant loans? If not, can they be moved in a way where the Education Award can help? Taylor, that's a good question. I know that if your loans are in default, you can't use the Education Award on them until they're current. I don't know if there is a way that they can be moved where the Education Award can help, and so I can't answer that one. You may call your loan servicer or whoever is responsible for that loan and servicing it and ask them that question. Let's see. Daryl, again, put your question in the chat and I'll answer you. Let's see. If I'm paying my student loans through IBR, can I still receive an interest accrual payment once my service year is over? If I'm paying my student, no, because they have to be in forbearance for you to get an interest accrual payment. Let's see. The university I'm hoping to attend is not Title IV. Is there any way that I can still use the award to further my education? I'm thinking about taking out a federal student loan and paying off the loan right away with the award. Is this the best method? Maybe. If the institution is not Title IV, taking out a student loan, I'm not sure if you'll be able to pay for that with a student loan because it's not a Title IV institution. It would need to be a Title IV institution to receive federal funds. I'm not sure that would work. Okay, let's see. Are my loans already in for? Oh, nope. Let's see. I'm in grad school. I have undergrad loans that I don't have to pay right now. Can I still apply for forbearance to receive the interest accrual payment? I'm in grad school, I have undergrad loans I don't have to pay away. Can I still apply for forbearance and receive the interest accrual payment? Yes. Calvin, how much did you pay in taxes when you made your lump sum payment on your? I don't remember. I don't remember the exact amount. I'm really sorry. That was like 4 years ago. Let's see. Think you? Well, would I need to use my whole award to pay the lump sum? No, you don't. You don't need to use your entire education award to pay the lump sum unless 12 payments on your loans is equal to your entire education award. Call your loan servicer and say, hey, I need to know how much one payment is so that I can, call and explain what you're trying to do, and they will guide you through that and let you know how much you need to pay with the education award, how much you need to send over to make that equal to 12 payments. All right, let's see. All right, we're almost done here. We're about to have to wrap up. I was still looking for Daryl, your questions. I'm not seeing them. I'm really sorry. I have to put them into the chat, and I'm not seeing them there. So I don't want to. I mean, I'm not ignoring you. I promise. I just don't see them, unless anyone else can see them. Let's see. Yeah, I really apologize. I promise you I'm not ignoring you. I just don't see your questions. So
we do have one question over the phone.
Oh, you do? Okay, well then this will be our last question. Let's take it.
And I do apologize. The person that queued over the phone, I was unable to decipher your name. If you have queued a question, your line is open.
Good afternoon.
Hi.
Hi, my name is Quanasia Fraud. I have a visitor here who's been trying to get his question through to you. And he currently has a private loan in forbearance period while he's serving, and he wants to know will he be able to have the interest paid on that loan even if it's private.
If it's a private loan, he won't be able to have the interest paid because we can only put loans into forbearance that are federally backed, so they have to be federal loans.
Yeah, well, the institution did put it in forbearance for him. However, he just wants to see the benefit that he's going to receive from using his Segal award, even though it's a private loan. Is there anything that he could apply toward his private loan from the Segal award?
No, there's not. Unfortunately, there's nothing that we can do with private loans because they are like federal funds. They won't pay they won't pay federal loans. They won't pay private loans with the education award.
Okay, thank you very much for your answer.
You're welcome.
Have a great day.
You too.
Thank you.
Thank you. There are no more questions in queue.
Yeah. All right, wonderful. Well, we are going to wrap up here. Thank you, everyone, so much for being on this webinar today. We hope that you can join us for our next webinar, Starting Off Right, Professional Workplace Success. It's on January 24th at 2 p.m. Eastern. Thank you so much to Natasha for co-presenting. You're wonderful as always. Thank you, Jessica Birch, for answering those questions and helping us out. If you guys have questions, email vistawebinars@cns.gov, and we will try to get back to you. So yeah, thanks so much. We hope to talk to you soon.
Thanks. Bye.